Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Think Big podcast. Today's episode 76, brought to you courtesy of the internet. Thank you very much, internet, whoever created it. You're the man. Today, we're going to be diving into a pretty sick topic, which is the 10 reasons your business is not growing in 2024. This is so matter of fact, and it's so timely because we just wrapped up quarter one. Last week, we talked about quarter four, quarter. The week prior, we talked about how to have a $1 million blueprint, not $1 billion, $1 million blueprint, a seven-figure blueprint, and really being able to backwards engineer it. And now that people have that information, I'm still worried. I'm still concerned. The guys and I talked about this, that what would be the reasons people don't succeed now that they've been given the formula, now that they've been given the blueprint. I mean, arguably, you've been given better information, more qualified information from qualified practitioners of the information than you receive in $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 masterminds and real estate courses and business courses. So you have the information. It's no longer a lack of resources. So we have to look at what are the reasons that people's businesses are still going to fail, quite frankly. And the reason you want to pay attention to this today, because if you understand why a business is failing, you can then go inside and make sure that you are not suffering from one of these 10 major afflictions. Now, I'm excited for today's episode. Before we get into it, though, I got to check in with my co-host, Sam. I got to check in with my co-host, Alejandro, find out how you guys feeling today. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great today, my friend. Nice to see you. Doing fantastic. What about you, Mr. Sam?
I'm stoked, man. I'm stoked. Last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, we've been going really hard on tactical value, and I think we've been showing people exactly what to do. And I think that it's important for us to take a step back and talk about here's all the shit that, like, if you don't correct intentionally on the front end. And while we made this list, did you guys notice that all this stuff, it's not stuff that they're doing. It's not stuff that they're going to continue to, it's not stuff that they're going to intentionally start doing. It's the stuff that they're already doing. So a lot of the list is actually breaking current habits and patterns that people are already in. So I'm actually super stoked on this episode because this one's going to be dope. But let's do it. So I think we should do this because we've got 10 things, and maybe a bonus one that I really do want to hit as long as we have time. But let's just break it up into a few. I think Marlon, you could start us off with maybe the first like 2 or 3, and we could just go into each one, talk about why they matter, what they are, how, each of us, the 3 of us, from our own insights and wisdom and experience have seen people falter due to these things. And then we could just start crunching along. But Marlon, you want to get us kicked off?
Yeah, we'll go through it, and we're gonna go through it in no particular order. Although we have a list on our side. I am gonna start off with the first one that we put down on our list, Sam, because I want this to be a bit of an open conversation between the 3 of us. And the first reason that a business is gonna fail in 2024 is because a person does not know how to hire. And I'm going to talk about this from my vantage point I want to explain the most common rookie mistake when it comes to hiring inside of your business. When you get to that place of feeling like you need to scale, you're ready to scale, or to your team. The number one mistake I see with this, and the reason it's so costly, is people begin to hire people like themselves. They start looking for their first hire as a carbon copy, and they are typically hiring off emotion, right? And this isn't to say that emotion isn't taken into account when you're hiring. However, most people are making very emotional hires. I like this person. I like this girl. She's really cool. We vibe well, right? She's so awesome. I love her energy. She's just like me. Probably not the person you want to hire yet. Because ultimately, your role is to get the person who loves to do what you hate to do. And then they are qualified to do that. So emotions come into play in the sense of, is this a person I want on my team? Is this a person I morally agree with? We're in moral alignment. We have core values. Yeah, that's important. However, not just am I hiring this person because I basically want a friend. And I've made this mistake. I've hired people because essentially I was paying for a friend. And then when I realized my friend wasn't doing the job that I needed them to do, I realized I made a wrong hire, and I had to begin to learn how to fire. And that's inevitable. You will have to learn how to fire. However, not making the right hire is actually a major, major issue. And it's going to hold a lot of people back in 2024, and especially because we're looking at the fact that sometimes when we talk about not knowing how to hire, some people don't feel they need to hire. They think they can grow without hiring. And arguably that's an issue. If you are trying to grow something that doesn't involve other people, you're not growing anything valuable, worthwhile, or sustainable, in my opinion. So,
Yeah,
Sam,
I think
I know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think this is a critical topic. You know, I feel like we've hit on this quite a bit the last couple episodes. I would say not last episode, 3 episodes ago. I think it was Alejandro and me. Marlon was running in some apocalyptic area, and so Alejandro and I talked about the psychology of hiring and building a team. And I went further into an org chart on the next episode, but about 3 episodes ago, I believe, we talked about team building and the importance and the psychology behind it. And very often, to Marlon's point, there's a lot of psychological fallacies that happen when we hire, right? We're either A, trying to replace ourselves, or B, we're trying to, very often we hire in a way that isn't sustainable in the long run. And what that means is very often we are hurting. I see this so much, guys. I see this so much. We are hurting for someone to come in and take over a position, to take something off our plates right now. And because there is so much pain with all of the work that is involved right now, it's become so cumbersome. What ends up happening is that we rush into a hire and we don't take the proper steps in care that need to happen. So for me, guys, I always, liken it to this experience that I've had in my life, is that I used to work for the government, and whether it was the local government, state government, and federal government, worked in all three rings. The hiring process was not quick and it was not easy by any means. We had to go through physical fitness tests, several of them, medical examinations, psychological or psychiatric evaluation, polygraphs, which is a fancy word for lie detector tests. We went through extensive background checks where they would come and talk to, my employers, my colleagues that I used to work with, wherever I was working, my local, just like my personal friends who I play tennis with. They would go to these deep ends to basically vet every single thing about me. And they would harp on the smallest things, guys. One of the smallest things with me, Marlon, you guys know this. I don't drink. I don't drink alcohol. It's something I just don't do. There's no, grandiose reason behind it. I just don't. It's just not what I like to do. And they they literally never believed it. They never believed me. And so it was a theme, because it sounds so outlandish. At the time I was in my young 20s in college, that you don't drink. It was a consistent thing on my background that they would harp on these character traits, because these character traits affect you and they affect your ability to perform the job or be good or be, at the most important, at the end of all of it, a qualified ambassador for the agency, for the role, for heck, that level of the government, right? You're supposed to be a qualified ambassador for everything that you do. And when I got into this industry, I started seeing that, JVing and squatting up is such a buzzword. And guys, we JV a lot. We're dispoing, I think 8 or 9 JV deals right now where people have sent us contracts. We crush JVs. The problem is that when time comes to launch the business in a really effective way, what we end up doing is we rely on that JV mentality where it's a quick start. And then those things are great because they're quick starters, but they also burn out really fast. And then when I started having this issue where I call it running into the solopreneur's curse, where I couldn't build a team that, lasted long enough for me to exit the business, what ended up happening is I sat down with a mentor of mine who knows about my previous work history. And they said, hey, out of the people that applied, how many people applied for every, one of you that was hired? And it was about 1,000 to 1 ratio. It was literally over 1,000 applicants to 1 hire. And I was fortunately that 1 hire. And they're like, cool, they found the best of the best. How do they do that? What steps do they go through? And I'm like, well, this, that, and the other. And then my mentor looked at me and he was like, Sam, you want to make $100,000 a month and you think you're going to find the right talent by 1 phone call interview and that's it? And that was a massive paradigm shift for me. So it's not only do we need to take the time, to vet the candidate and work on them, not just from a technical, and guys, I firmly believe this. I'm a firm believer in this right now. Technical aspects can be taught, core values cannot. Core values are things that, I mean, like maybe they can, but you guys don't have the time or the attention or the energy to basically reshape someone's freaking soul. You just don't. It's not for you to do. That's for them to do through life experience. So I would say technical aspects can be taught. A lot of times we hire really quickly because someone knows how to do the job. And then we get surprised when we find out that, they are, they cheat on their spouse, right? Or they have an excessive substance abuse problem, which then affects their work life. Or then we find out that, they have all of these other little tendencies that in and of itself can become a detriment to the core values of your business. So my first thing is hire on core values first, because you cannot train them into someone. You can yell them at someone, but it doesn't mean they're going to absorb and internalize and change how they operate. Right. And so that's a huge, huge, huge thing for me. But 100%, if you guys want us to go deeper on that, 3 episodes ago, we actually went heavily into the psychology of hiring and building a team. And then 2 episodes ago, we actually went over building $1 million blueprint, where we basically talked about the different positions and what they need. Alejandro, do you want to hit anything before we move on? You're muted.
You're muted, Alejandro.
Yeah, my bad, guys. I have a question, Sam. I know you talk to a lot of business owners and all the cool stuff. Do they have? Do you see a tip, somewhat of a top 3 core value that people like to hire based on?
I would say out of the top owners I usually see a trend, and this is why I hire specifically for this. There's like different types of roles that I'll hire for. And for me, what really matters more than anything are my directors, right? My directors are the ones who basically run the businesses. And to me, they're the ones that matter the most. And so I like to use these 3 things. I like to see, it's not a make it or break it, but I like to see these 3 things because they tend to come along with a lot of traits that are perfect for my core values. And I like to hire from former military, law enforcement, or collegiate or professional team sports. Why those 3 things? All 3 of those things understand teamwork first. They understand the mission, which is the company, the business, the organization, the team winning comes first. And that's why with me, both my directors right now are former military, one's from the Air Force and one's from the Army. And we have like this general motto, and that's, mission first, then team, then me. So when you get those 3 things, right, military, law enforcement, collegiate athletes or professional athletes from a team sport, the other big thing that they get is those 3 demographics tend to really understand discipline. They understand the chain of command. They understand discipline at a heavy, heavy, heavy level. They understand that at the end of the day, right, it's like you look at like a military academy or law enforcement academy or just, a college tennis team, soccer team, football team, whatever, right? Game day is just 1 day a week. But for every game day, they'll do 2 a day, 6 days a week where they're training their asses off and suffering, focusing on the reps, focusing on the process. So it's very much process first. Like if you want the win is a result of the process. And with those 3 kind of industries, we tend to see that we get process-oriented human beings first. And honestly, I'm sorry, can we find those people outside in other industries? Absolutely. But those people generally centralize in certain kind of avenues. We see this commonly in the military. We see this commonly in law enforcement. We see this commonly in team sports is process, team, mission. And in all of these things, what ends up happening, the individual doesn't come first. They come last. So that's the avatar that I like. By the way, that avatar, like teaching, the person who taught me to hire from that was actually a mentor of mine who right now, the last time I talked to them was about like 6 months ago. I think they were doing like 80 million a year top line revenue in all their businesses. And that's like their core mantra. That's their core mantra. If you are someone in their business who is a director or has decision-making capability, you have to have one of those backgrounds, plus like a level of critical thinking analysis and all that kind of good stuff too. But all the last thing I'm gonna say is real quick, those three also understand leadership qualities. Leadership qualities are ingrained in those three kind of industry sectors. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. I would say for me on the hires, it's just going to be when you're first starting out, you're going to have people that are just going to want to come in and out and help you out here and there. Don't do it. From my experience, like it's costing you money to do that, and you're not actually growing. You're just putting a band-aid on a fix that you're looking for, so it doesn't really work out long term. Like, think about it, you're gonna have someone part-time because they have this going on. Number one, you don't truly know if they're really working part-time, right? Maybe they're like, hey, I have to go because whatever, and the reason is just because they don't want to work. And you're spending all this money on your marketing, you're spending all this time training that person, and next thing you know, they obviously working part-time, so the results are you get part-time results, which in reality it's not going to be really really good, or it's not going to be attractive for that person to stay there. So now you wasted all the resources, your time marketing, and that person just leaves you. So from my experience, if you want to have a hire, make sure they're fully committed like you are to your company. And that's all I want to add to that.
There you go. Marlon, what's number two?
Yep. So number two is, and actually I'm going to say this final thing with the hiring process. Don't make the mistake of finding the person and trying to mold your business around the people you find. Instead, mold your
Ooh.
business and find people that fit the mold. Much
Mm.
more important to do that. So number two, we're looking at you don't use the right marketing channels. So the second reason businesses fail to grow, and you're going to see this a lot in 2024 as we have shifting markets, as we have shifting people coming in and out of the markets, the customers are changing. Your marketing channels are not useful. They're not effective. And what do we call Einstein calls this insanity is when you're doing the same thing over and over and over expecting a new result. That's the clinical definition of insanity. I see this all the time. People are consistently doing something that worked 3 seasons ago, 4 seasons ago. And it's not that that thing doesn't work, it's that thing isn't working right now. Marketing is consistently dynamic, it's forever changing. I resisted the fact of like I had to learn how to get on the internet and figure out like Facebook marketing, Facebook ads, and yet it's what my business calls for. It's some of you are having to figure out PPC and PPL, and some of you are having to figure out SMS because you used to just send direct mail, or you're not realizing that direct mail still works. It's just the volume, the metrics have changed as to how much needs to be sent in order to make it work. So understanding and using the right marketing channels will absolutely make and break your business, because if you don't have leads, you don't have a business.
Mm. Yep.
That's so good. I'm going to say this, guys. This is something that we hit on heavily, or I hit on heavily, is marketing and the fact that marketing is cyclical. The answer is truly this: what worked 5 years ago may not work today, and what's going to work tomorrow may not work right now. And the answer is always this: you always have to ask yourself, where does your competitive advantage come from? And there's so many channels that make a lot of money and do a lot of things, but also it's also very market dependent, right? So depending on what you're interested in, depending on even if you're in other business models, the reality is you don't have to be in real estate to understand that you could be selling anything. You could be doing drop shipping, you could be doing coaching, you could be doing, infomercial stuff. You could anything. It doesn't really matter. The reality is there are so many ways to generate leads and so many different marketing channels that have product market fit and some don't. And I think what's critical to remember is you have to understand no matter what you're doing, I think the three of us truly do believe in abundance mentality at a really high level, but I think we also three understand that marketplace competition is a real thing. That is truly it. There is a marketplace competition. There is a finite level of opportunity at the end of the day. And you have to understand, with what you are doing, with the resources that you have, are you playing a viable game? And what do I mean by that is this, is I like to look at, I'm going to keep it real estate oriented because that's a lot of people here. You go into a market, right? And because you watched a certain challenge or this, that, and the other, you end up going and hiring 2 virtual assistants to pull 20,000 records a month of really shitty bulk data. And then you go into a massively competitive marketplace like Las Vegas, Nevada. That's my playground. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to wonder why your best friend, who's doing the exact same thing in the middle of Nebraska, is generating 7 leads a day and you're generating 1 every 5 days, because they're in a different marketplace doing everything the exact same as you, right? But the difference is that that experimental variable is, or the control variable, I should say. No, experimental variable, sorry, is the fact that you're in a different marketplace, and that marketplace has a huge effect on things. So I'm not going to hit on this too much, guys. I did a 5.5-hour masterclass on this called Marketing Secrets a few weeks ago. So I think in the interest of time, we do have to speed up. So Marlon, what's number 3?
Yo, number 3, and this one is going to be something that you're going to speak on, Sam, is your current systems aren't scalable. And we got to talk about this because here it was. I was out in the middle of Kansas today as we're doing the run across America. Got back into the RV right before this call, and I found myself looking at acres and acres and acres of farmland. So massive open bits of farmland. And then in the center of the acre, I saw a massive water tower. By the way, how's my audio? Is it coming through or am I getting choppy? Because you guys are freezing on my end. I'm getting the thumbs up.
No.
Perfect. I saw a massive water tower. And what's really interesting is if anyone understands the science behind how a water tower works, you understand that however high that water tower reaches up into the air, the gravity, the natural pressure that's produced by gravity of the water coming back down to earth provides enough pressure to work for all the plumbing of all the buildings and homes around it, as long as those buildings and homes are beneath the height of the water tower. So this is something that, a child can figure out playing in the backyard if they were to build something, that's only 3 feet up and they have it providing water pressure for something that's 1 foot up. Because it's a good system, because it's built on a solid foundation, the science is solid, it is infinitely scalable. We're able to build cities with skyscrapers that reach hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, theoretically, hundreds and hundreds of feet and stories into the air if we're able to build a water tower equally high next to it. So it's by understanding good structure and understanding good foundations, you can actually scale something. If you find that when you start adding more to your system, it begins to break, you weren't building something that was sustainable. It wasn't strong enough from the start. So the cracks will be seen because ultimately a lot of people make the mistake of feeling I'm ready to scale. In fact, I was talking to a guy who reached out to me earlier today. He said he wanted to do coaching. And I said, well, what are your goals? He says, I want to scale by the end of the year. I said, what's your goals in the next 6 to 12 months? Sam, he said, I want to scale. Sam, what do you think I asked him right after that? I asked him, what does that mean? Like, what is scale?
Define that.
Exactly. Like what? Because everyone's definition of scale. And he said, well, to me, scale means I don't need to work. And I was like, okay, well, then we've got 2 totally different definitions of what scale is. To me, when you're talking about scaling, you're talking about increasing the size of what is working. Effectively, you've created something that works, and now we're increasing the size. We're enlarging it because it's such a powerful situation here, and we're increasing the efficiency of it. Right? We're increasing you had 1 input that produced 1 output. Now that 1 input is producing 4 outputs. To me, that's what scale means in my mind. So what was really, really interesting is a lot of people are going to set their goal this year to scale, but they aren't building a strong, proper foundation. This is why blueprints matter. This is why if they go back to episode 74, where we talked about $1 million blueprint, they'll realize that it's not about the vanity metrics. It's not about trying to impress your friends by telling them you've hired 40 new people. It's more about building a rock solid foundation, building your business on a rock bed instead of sand. I highly recommend, by the way, people go back and watch episode 74 if you haven't done so already.
So good. I'll say this. I want to give people an applied example that I see day in day out, and this is the issue. So I'm a firm believer in. I think JVs are phenomenal. I think we all do. I think JVs are great. I think JVs are a season that you start with and a season that you can potentially come back to down the road. I think in the beginning, when you don't have time, money, experience, or all the three, what ends up happening is you like to JV a lot because it helps you get through a season. And then it's very pertinent for you to go learn the business as a whole, right, in a vacuum, where JVing with someone else is not an option. So you can learn how to actually, create a business that has structure and systems and processes that can actually have scalability. And then eventually, when you have the foundations and the systems and structure, you can bring JV back as just another, lead generation pipeline, and that's it. But I see this so often with the JV model, because it's so consistently available with newbies and intermediate folks, is newbies will come in and they will JV, and what will happen is that JV will become their entire business model as a whole. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm actually a huge advocate of that. But what ends up happening is they will reach a bottleneck in their business when their personal development hasn't developed past, I need to outsource sections of my business to other people. It is one thing, guys, to JV and outsource sections of your business to someone else because you understand what it takes to do all those things. You know it through and through, and you have made a tactical ROI-based decision that the pros versus the cons, the inputs versus the outputs, it's worth me outsourcing that, and I understand that. That is what I call tactical JV. It is absolutely the right way to do it. What ends up being the bottleneck at scale for a lot of people is they never personally develop themselves as business owners. So they have the entire, foundation of the business, right? You have marketing and sales, TC fulfillment, and then, disposition on the back end. What ends up happening is they never learn those holes. Right? They never care to develop themselves past it. And what that does is it creates something very dangerous. It creates codependency. It creates this dependence on someone else to do the work for you. And if they decide to pull the plug on you, what ends up happening to your business? It falls apart because you as a business owner didn't self-develop enough to understand what was missing. So I'm okay with JV. I'm okay with JV even being your base business model, as long as you understand JV as well as I understand PPC, PPL, direct mail, texting, cold calling, the whole nine. If you understand it as a business through and through, then it's worth doing at scale. Yeah.
Question for you, because you were a business owner, and I don't want people to gloss over that, because you business owner very differently than entrepreneur, than really. How many people do you see in business? This is going to be I'm asking your opinion because I'm sure none of us have the statistic on this. At least I don't. How many people that you see in business, do you feel are business owners and mentally view themselves as such? And how many people do you feel what's that statistic? If there was is it 20% of people that you see in business actually identify as business owners, 10%, 5%, 90%? How many people identify that and their behaviors reflect the actions of what we would define a business owner?
Personally speaking, I would venture to say less than 1%, honestly. And the reality is that we know for a fact that 99% of businesses will never reach $1 million in a year. And then less than 0.4% will ever get to 10 figures a year. The reality is, I think that you're so critical on this, and you're so good on this. It's an identification epidemic. People who own a real estate investment business don't identify as business owners. They identify as real estate investors. People who own a drop shipping business don't identify as business owners. They identify as drop shippers. People who own a car sales business don't identify as business owners. They identify as car salesmen. And what ends up happening is you end up confining your existence and your identity to one thing and one thing only, and that is the task at hand. And then what ends up happening, the people who win at the highest levels are the ones who understand that fundamentally every business is almost the exact same. Fundamentally. This is why guys like Alex Hormozi, Grant Cardone with 10X Ventures. You know, our guy Pace Morby right now. Pace Morby has a business that he has, I think, like half ownership or even more, where they create grass artificial turf statues that are, they just make giant gorillas made of grass, and then that's modern art in someone's living room, right? I don't think Pace Morby really knows much about mowing lawns or creating grass sculptures or fine art. I love him, he's great, but I don't think that's his forte. So how is the real estate investor guy own that company, right? How does Alex Hermosi own all these companies when he was just the gym guy? Because even when he was the gym guy, he didn't identify as the gym guy. He identified as a business owner. So I think, Marlon, to answer your question, less than 1%. And honestly, I think that I'm being generous with that.
That's huge. So, guys, we're not going to continue to dive deep. I wish we could stay on each one of these topics longer. I mean, each one could be an episode in and of itself, but make sure that you pay attention to how have you been identifying yourself in business. Let's move on to reason number 4. And reason number 4 being the reason you're not going to scale, and not even scale, the reason your business will fail to grow in 2024 is because of the friends you keep. You have loser friends. Being honest, like your friends suck. Your friends, they're probably nice people, but they are causing you to lose money. How do I know? If your friends haven't made you money in the last 12 months, they've cost you money in the last 12 months. I remember 3 years ago, my mentor told me to pull out my phone. He said, open it up. And he said, I want you to scroll through everybody in your contacts list and look at every single person there, every single name. And if they haven't made you money in the last 6 months, delete their number. Now, I thought that was a little extreme and a little harsh. And I got to be honest, Sam, Alejandro, I struggled with that exercise. In fact, I did not delete all the numbers. However, it did cause me to pause and think. Who are the people that I've been spending time with? Who have I been texting? Who have I been calling? There's a little feature on iPhones that allow you to put your top 9 conversations at the top, that you can pin them to your top. I am very selective about the names that are pinned to the top of my screen because those are the people I talk to the most. And fortunately for me, those are the people that help me grow. For example, Sam just mentioned having the differentiating identity of being a business owner versus an entrepreneur versus a real estate investor versus a drop shipper. I learned that definition of business owner because of my direct friendship with Sam Singh. That was a shock to me. In fact, Sam came to my mastermind. He spoke at my mastermind, and I listened. Like, I don't just take it for granted that Sam's my friend. I look at him as a brother. I look at him as a mentor on occasion when he's speaking about things that he knows more of than I do. I sit there with my notepad ready. And when he made that crucial analogy of you have to be a business owner, he shifted my identity. He made me realize, wow, I've been self-identifying as a real estate investor. I've been telling everybody for the last several years I am a real estate investor, and I have been locking myself in and pigeonholing myself in based on the opportunities I can receive and based on the way I would even begin to see the opportunities. Your friends suck if they're not growing you. Get rid of the relationships. Get rid of it. Like, I'm telling you right now, clear it out. If you're on social media and you're following people who are not growing you, unfollow them.
I like to add on to that, Marlon, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's whenever you're starting out, it's easier to keep your older friends around because they keep you quote unquote comfortable, comfortable being quote unquote yourself. However, if you're trying to grow, then you have to become someone new. And that is the number one thing that a lot of people won't understand. And even myself, it took me a little bit to understand, where it got to a point where, you know what, it is okay for me to be different than my current friends. Because how can all the current friends I have, they're all broke. So how can I not to be okay becoming someone else away from my friends to become someone new and succeed and achieve my goals? So keep that in mind. It's like, are you keeping your friends around because they truly make you happy, or they make you feel comfortable being quote unquote your current self? But you have to change. To change things in your life, you have to change yourself.
I'll say this. I want people to have an ability to filter this. A friend and mentor, someone I consider truly a friend, someone that I look up to and I admire and I respect greatly. He owns a company that does over $100 million a year, and this person, they make infinitely more money than I do, and have a business at a scale infinitely beyond mine, and they still take the time to pour into me, right? Always. And I flew out to Ohio and I spent some time with them. And this guy, he basically, is supposed to. I find out he has to travel to Florida to go meet Grant Cardone. That's where he had to be on the flight that day, and they cut it this close to missing their flight just so they could take me to lunch. And they're like, hey, we've got a flight to somewhere in Florida. They didn't tell me. I saw through Instagram the next day that they were hanging out with Grant freaking Cardone, right? One-on-one. I was like, what the hell? But he told me something about this. I asked him, I was like, hey man, you make over 100 million a year. You did like 65 million the year prior to that. Like, what the hell? How are we friends? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And he said, Sam, at the end of the day, it's like, I don't care about how much money you make. I really don't. I care about how obsessed you are with reaching the next level, because you are as obsessed as I am with reaching the next level. And I told him that I had friends in my life who I was like struggling with because I felt like I was outgrowing them. And he said something to me that was a phenomenal filter. And he said, Sam, you'll get to a point where you will understand who to cut out, because they will be what you would call remember when friends, right? They're remember when friends. And whenever you hang out, all they do is talk about remember this, remember that, remember when we did this, remember when we did that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we do a bunch of cool shit together. Marlon and I jump out of planes together and we have a great time talking about it. But Marlon and I probably spend 90% of our conversation talking about the stuff that we want to do together in the future, the things that we want to grow towards. And so that's an amazing filter, is when you meet up with people and your friends and they're still talking about the same shit, the same stuff, the same everything. And most importantly, this is my big filter, guys. If 6 months go by and you and I take some distance, we take some time, we come back together in 6 months. If I find out my friends personally are solving the same problem that they were 6 months ago, then nothing against you. It's nothing personal. We're just not in alignment. That's it. I only want to be around people who only have to solve a problem one time and they never have to solve the problem again. And I feel like there's friends in life. You guys, a lot of you guys will actually find out. A lot of you guys will find out that there's been people in your life who just keep going back to the problems, right? If you have a friend who's in an abusive relationship and you're wondering, why don't you just dump the asshole? And then like every 3 months she's back with the guy. Eventually you're going to get tired about telling her to dump the guy. You're just going to be like, well, at this point you just keep going back, right? And it's hard for me to feel sorry for you, even though I do, because you're becoming a willing participant. And so when I have friends who are solving the same lead flow problem, the same business problem, the same team building problem, the same whatever, I see that this trend can, persist for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. What I'm failing to see is a growth rate, right? And for me, that's critical. Why do I love these guys? Because every freaking 5 minutes, these guys are leveling up and solving a new problem, right? And they thrive off of it. I know Marlon. Marlon is obsessed with what is the next thing. He would get bored in life if he solves the same problem over and over again. And so that's a huge filter for me. Guys, just find out what the filters are for you and hold everyone to those standards. Okay, what's next?
Huge. Now, this next reason that your business is not going to grow in 2024 is because you lack focus and discipline. I would argue that if I had to put the most important one to pay attention to, I would argue that this is up there. Maybe at the end we'll go back and we'll see which one's number one. However, the lack of focus and discipline is the reason most people are still trying to figure out the same problem, like Sam said, 6 months later. It's because you actually had the blueprint. You already knew what needed to be done. You just weren't willing to be consistent enough and persistent enough to get it done. And that comes from a lack of focus and a lack of showing up day in and day out to do the boring, unsexy things. In fact, Here it is that my friends and I were running across America. You guys obviously know this. That's why I'm in RV right now. And it's 78 days of essentially waking up and doing the same thing. 78 days of waking up and having the same boring breakfast and putting on the same shoes and stepping out the door and just running down dirt roads and running down highways and running through the wind and running through the rain. And it's not sexy. It's not as cool as Instagram makes it look. I know for a fact that we make it look cooler on Instagram because we've got an insane videographer on the team. We got Nick Vlay with the camera skills like no other, and he's editing videos, he's setting the photos, he's setting the like it looks so freaking cool. The reality of it is it's about 12 to 13 hours a day of just being in the Hurt Locker, of just doing the work. And that requires a level of discipline that you have to have. It's a self-mastery, it's a self-focus. And when people talk about discipline and then they say self-discipline, I'm like, dude, there's only one type of discipline. There is only self-discipline. You can't discipline somebody else. Discipline can only ever be used on yourself. And your lack of focus is arguably we both, Sam, Alejandro, all three of us, we pay attention to a lot of one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time, Alex Hormozy. And he talks about this concept of the number one resource that entrepreneurs are massively leaking is their attention. And most people don't view their attention as a resource, as a resource that's finite, that's limited. And because they don't look at it as a resource, and that even if they do look at it as a resource, they don't consider it to be finite. They don't pay attention to the amount of it that they have in any 24-hour period. They unfortunately waste it. They don't invest it. Because if it were a currency, if it were a dollar, it's easy to recognize when you're spending a dollar and you're not getting a good ROI on it. What about your attention? Which is arguably more valuable than the dollar, because I can lose a dollar and get it back. I lost yesterday's attention. I can't go back and get yesterday's attention to respend again. It's gone for life. Where are you putting your focus? Where are you putting your attention? Because whatever it is you focus on, whatever you put your attention on, that is what will grow. If you are not disciplined enough to actually control the direction in which it's going, you're going to find that your business is going to suffer. There will be a direct correlation to your capacity to stay locked in on something, to be locked in on a target, to be locked in on a goal, to have your team and your organization locked in on this target, and your ability to earn and succeed and grow in 2024. There will be a direct correlation. Alejandro, Sam, I'm curious to know what your guys' thought is on essentially the lack of focus and discipline.
For sure, man. Marley, you definitely hit it on the nail with that one. And for me, I'm just gonna say I had to learn that the hard way, because when I first started my company, I was busy buying company shirts, company coffee cups, mouse pads with my logo. I'm like, oh heck yeah, I'm a business owner. I'm busy, dude. Let me do my logo on my mouse pad and get this going. But 30 days down the line, I didn't have any closes. I didn't have any deals funded. So I'm like, wait, I need to get that money back. How do I do that? And obviously, the necessary thing to do is to do the hard things, which is to stay focused on making calls, underwriting, calling buyers, building a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. Depending on what business you're in, you have to focus on what you have to do to propel forward financially. And that is always going to be the hardest thing. And whatever you do, I would practice on starting small. If it's really hard for you to focus, for me, it's, believe it or not, it's really hard for me to stay focused. I have to design my exterior world for it to benefit my interior world, which is my mind. I have to turn off my iPad. Do I have to put it on do not disturb? Do I have to put it on airplane mode? I have specific what is it called? Google extensions that if I get on YouTube, I don't read comments. I can't read the comments. If I get on Facebook, I can't see the timeline. I only go on Facebook for the necessary things. It's like it's just minimizing the distractions as much as I can. Have my airplane mode, have two phones. If I'm going to bed, if I'm going to go hang out with my lady, then it's just my personal phone. work stays here, etc. Like there's just different things, and you have to find out what really fits your life. But whenever you're in at the battle station, which is what I call it, then get ready for war. Nothing else. That's it. You don't take phone calls. You do what you have to do, no matter what. So that's my take on it.
Huge, huge. Last thing I want to say this just to kind of prove a point here, guys. It took me about 25, maybe 30 deals before I even had a proper email, like a proper business email. I literally, guys, got to about like 30 deals like closed under like my samsing@gmail.com email that was going out to sellers, right? Before I finally got my shit together and like got like a Sam property investments, whatever, at property investments, like an actual domain email. I didn't get a website until I'd crossed 45 to 50 deals. All I knew was one thing, and that's that if I made the dials and talked to sellers, we would do deals. Everything else, though, even the email didn't matter. Even the website didn't matter. Hell, to this day, I would probably venture to say that out of the 220, 230 plus deals we've closed, I would probably say maybe 3 sellers have ever actually looked at my website. So, yeah, 100% focus on the shit that actually moves the needle today. Awesome.
Yep.
Marley, what's next?
I'm gonna beat the nail on the head one more time with this is odds are there's only one thing that you really need to focus on that if you just did over and over and over, it might not be the most efficient thing. It won't be the thing that you're going to do for the next 20 years, but it will be the thing that if you can commit to doing one thing over and over, like Sam said, if you make the calls, freaking make the calls until it works. If it's knocking on doors, knock on freaking doors until it works. The key word here is until. That is the key word. That's what discipline is. That's what focus is. That's what persistence is. It's until. And then after you get a result, and I'm telling you, you're all going to suck in the beginning. You're all going to be doing massively inefficient things in the beginning, no matter who you are, because that's the nature of growth. If we got it right the first time, there would have never been another iPhone after the first iPhone. And yet we all stand online to buy the next iPhone, and we'll stand online to get the iPhone 27 whenever it comes out. Lock in and commit. All right, next one. Let's roll. We've got, this one's such a good one. The reason your business is not going to grow in 2024, you don't know how to prioritize things in your business. That's just the truth. You don't know how to prioritize. So let's talk about what prioritizing actually means, because this is one of the key habits that I get paid thousands of dollars to teach people how to prioritize. So let's talk about what prioritizing is, because a lot of people think about becoming more productive. We look around on the internet and we start to feel, man, I see it all. I see the Elon Musk of the world having multiple companies. He's taking people to Mars and building electric Cybertrucks. I see the Grant Cardones and they're buying every single building in Miami. I see the Oprah Winfrey's and she's starting her own channel as well as starting schools across the country, like across the world. How are these people doing so much in the same 24 hours? Because arguably we all have the same 24 hours, right? And like it seems like that person gets more done. Well, I would say those people do get more things done in the same 24 hours, but it's not by having more things on their to-do list. It's not. Instead, what I would argue is the people that we see getting multiple things done effectively have understood a key word, which is leverage. They don't try to do more things. They try to do the things, or they don't try. They do the things that produce more. That for their input, they get more output. That's what leverage allows. Leverage allows me to put less or the same amount in, but get more out on the backside. Bad business owners, people that are going to fail in 2024, are the people that live off of their to-do list. I got to be honest. Like that's what you're using to operate your business. You're using a to-do list. The problem with a to-do list is it does not differentiate which tasks are more or less important. And Peter, I would say it's not time mastery. It's not time, because you can't master time. You can't slow the clock down. You can't speed it up. You don't have that control. If you do, come talk to me. I'll pay you a lot of money to teach me. But until someone can show me how to pause time and they can make the clock move slower or faster or whatever it is, 24 hours is always going to cost 24 hours. 1 minute's always going to cost 60 seconds. So instead of trying to master time or even manage time, what I need you to do is get better at identifying which task is going to be the biggest needle mover in your business. In order to properly do so, you need to be able to clearly identify and communicate to yourself and your team what the goal is. If we don't know what the target is, if I don't have clarity around the target, it's going to be impossible for me to prioritize. I need a destination first in order to prioritize, because here it is that we have a destination. We know we have to get to Central Park by May 18th. Because of that, if Drew and I were to run 40 miles and we went west, that action would be considered great on a normal day. But because the target is to get to Central Park, heading west now becomes the wrong action. It becomes an action that hurts me. Making calls and cold calling might be a great action, but if you're telling me, hey, Marlon, I need to close a deal by the end of the week, then you shouldn't be cold calling. You're going to probably want to go and JV and dispo somebody else's deal. That's going to be a more effective, higher leverage task for you to do. Go find someone who already has a contract and go sell it for them. Prioritizing is going to be how you effectively create more in 2024. And if you cannot do that, if you cannot prioritize, you will lose to the people who can. That's just what's going to happen. The marketplace will beat you up and spit you out if you cannot learn how to prioritize.
Simple, dude. I'm gonna say this real quick, and then I think we have to decide if we're gonna keep going or not. But at the end of the day, guys, this is how you tactically do it. You go into your business and you isolate every single task or event or activity that you could possibly do, every single action, every single input, right? What is a dial, right? A dial, an email, a post on Facebook if you're JVing, a lead being generated through an ad, all these things that you control, right? An offer being sent out, whatever it is. All of these activities, you need to basically list them all out, and then basically right next to each activity, be able to identify what I call a leverage multiplier. Basically, for every one input of this activity, this is what it yields on the outside, on the back end of it. And what you're going to find out is that you're going to spend a lot of your time doing one-to-one activities. I put one in, I get one out. And what ends up happening is you may not realize that there are 1 to 20 activities in leverage multiplier that are in your business that you are completely forgetting about, or you are completely, just dropping the ball on because you're so focused on the one-to-one activities because they're easier, because everyone else does it, or because it's good for social media, or whatever the hell it is, right? The reality is those 1 to 20 things, if you spent all of your time only focusing on the 1 to 20, what's going to end up happening is you will aggressively grow your business. And then you're going to do a time audit again, or an activity audit again in the next 2 quarters, next 1 quarter, 2 quarters. And then you're going to find out that you're going to do the same thing. And now you've unlocked a new level of activities. Now you have all these other activities because you're at a different scale in your business that have just shown up. You do the same thing again. And now all of a sudden you're going to realize that you don't have a 1 to 20 activity anymore. You've got things on this roster that are a 1 in 50 or a 1 to 100. And then what you're always going to keep doing is you as the business owner always focus on higher leverage as soon as you can, and leave the rest to everyone else. Leave the rest to your employees, leave the rest to your JV partners. It doesn't matter. Your job is to move the needle the most, and you do that by isolating leverage multipliers. Guys, unfortunately, we're out of time. We are completely out of time. And we 100%, we actually had 10 things that we wanted to go over, and actually a super big bonus one that I actually have a story about that is going to cost, at least one person. I have a story that I want to address that's going to cost one person a ton of money and success. Like, I can prove this, that they've massively lost out on a lot of success. And it's because of a bonus number 11. But unfortunately, we are completely off for today. Marlon has to go and keep running, 50 more miles today to get to New York.
Bro,
Alejandro,
dude, the RV just opened, and like the guys came in with like apparently someone saw us on the news. Somebody spotted my calves out there in the street. They saw these quads of the calves, and they straight up like gave us the best barbecue in all of Kansas. Apparently, this is absolutely insane. People have been so freaking generous. Just had to share that. Huge.
Look at
No, yeah,
Marlon staring
you
down.
guys are amazing. We've seen you guys on like on news stations and everything. It's freaking huge, man. 100%. Alejandro, I think the people have got some dues they need to pay. So we can come back and do this again if it made sense.
Yes, absolutely. If you gain any value from what we share today, please share this with a friend. We're not asking for you to swipe your card. We're not asking for you to sell your soul. Nothing. Just share it with a friend if you gain any value with it. And if you didn't, it's fine. Fair enough. Fair game. But we would really appreciate if you share this. We're growing this organically and want to bring in like-minded people like yourself, like you guys that are watching. And yeah, look, you get to hang out with people like like Marlon, Sam.
Those are the quads. Those are the quads.
Those are the quads right there, ladies. Come on now. Yo, I'm just saying, like those quads and those calves were on the news. Yeah. Wow. Channel 13. Channel 13. All right.
Perfect.
But I'm just a normal guy. I swear, I'm just a normal guy. Just a man. Just a mortal.
All right, guys. Come back next time. Share on social media. Share some love. Tag us on it. We love seeing this. We've seen someone. Mac is the one who started this. Mac started this amazing thing where he always takes a screenshot, always takes his biggest takeaways, and posts them on social media. Tags all of us. And what's really kind of cool is that Mac has competition now, and there's a few other people doing the exact same thing, and we love seeing it because guess what ends up happening for us? We read those recaps. We capture things that we totally that we didn't see, that we didn't even notice, right? Yep. So those things are huge. Guys, share some love on social media, tag us, tag the three of us. Come back next week for reasons 7, 8, 9, 10, and a bonus one that's going to cost someone probably $250,000 this year in lost success. And also come back because Marlon is going to show you his quads and his calves next week. But until then, peace, guys.
Peace.